You're listening to The Great and Secret Knowledge, a speculative fiction podcast. I'm Jeff, and you are...
I'm Sofia. Hey.
Sofia. So good to be back. I love this book. What did you think of these two chapters?
Well, I think they're great chapters. I really enjoy just the overall exploration of Gregor.
Oh, we're really getting into it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Seeing him work. I love that moment where Miles is like trying not to fucking lose it, and Gregor is just like cool as a cucumber. He comes into his own in this one. When he starts saying our to refer to himself, like in front of his liegemen or whatever. That was great. And Tongue is like, what the hell's going on here?
Yeah, he could never guess. That's why he's...
And then you got the reversals, the betrayals, the tense office fights.
Yeah, that's true. We will get to also one of the near death.
Yeah, we should be keeping a tally. How many times has Miles almost died?
But no, I think that I do have the tally, but it depends on if you want to count, was he charged with treason? I don't think that counts, but maybe it does for him.
Metsov said that if a Vor commits treason, they get executed. I think they get quartered in the street.
Yeah, but I don't think that it counts as a near death, but it depends. We would have to discuss it.
That's true. No, it took a long time before he even got out of the IMSEC building.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Man, well, I don't really have anything interesting to talk about in my personal life or whatever, so I think we could just charge forward, unless you have a great story.
No, I've only been sleeping.
Nice. All right. Chapter 10 starts off, Miles is recovering from his shock stick injuries, and he needs to hide out while Gregor works his contract slave job. Miles apparently, I can't remember the context of this. He doesn't want to complicate things while he's recovering. And he says, call it Rule 27B, never make key tactical decisions while having electroconvulsive seizures.
I think that it's connected to, he feels like maybe I made it worse for Gregor by coming with him. That maybe I could have if I had just put my head down, then he would himself have just gone to the consulate and, maybe I stirred the pot unnecessarily.
Yeah. She really put him in a box there. He had 5 minutes to come up with a plan.
Yeah.
And so he and Gregor just improvised until a man might have died. No big deal.
Yeah, and he... but I feel like he made the right decision in the circumstances. He didn't know anything about Gregor's situation. It makes sense that he would want to join him.
All the same issues would have continued, except Sita Gando would have claimed the Hagen hub. So everything else is sort of secondary. Barry R would be riven by catastrophe. So yeah, this was really the only choice.
Yeah, but I can't take credit for that part. So
I'm gonna have to put a spoiler alert before I just
maybe you should bleep
bomb.
It out. Depends on what the policy is.
Yeah. Hey, listener, I probably beeped that last bit out. That's my commitment to the bit. We won't spoil you ahead of time if we can avoid it. All right. So Miles needs to stay hidden in Gregor's room to avoid the security. So they they find a spot for him. Do you want to read this one?
You always were good at hide and seek, Gregor said admiringly, and pressed the panel down. I was smaller then, Miles mumbled, through squashed cheeks. Pipes and circuit boxes sank into his back and buttocks. Gregory fastened their catches, and all was dark and silent for a few minutes. Like a coffin, like a pressed flower, some kind of biological specimen, anyway. Canned ensign.
Canned ensign.
Oh, is it
That
ensign?
sounds terrible. I have claustrophobia, so I wouldn't be into that at all.
I
Plus,
think it would
sounds
be
painful.
Yeah, for me it would be all right, but it's painful, like you said.
I especially don't like a coffin. That feels bad. It'd be fine if there was like decking, with like holes for breathing. But like just being stuck down there for an indefinite period of time, hoping Gregor eventually lets you out. Or can he open it from the inside?
Yeah, difficult to say. I feel like he thinks at some point like, oh, should I get up? Should I like look up?
Okay, so
he probably can.
So some security folks come in looking for Miles, and Gregor pretends not to know the guy. He's like, just that short guy? Yeah, he just came in behind me. So the guards start hitting him with their shock sticks, but he just stays firm, he won't give up. He finally admits that he did know Miles, but that he left. And so the guards go to check the entire rest of the ship. Let's see. I'm trying to figure the context of this. He's talking about the slave situation. And he's thinking about what he should do. So he must certainly free Gregor from his slave labor contract as soon as possible after their arrival at Aslan Station. Contract laborers of this order were bound to be stuck with the dirtiest and most dangerous jobs, the most exposure to radiation, to dubious life support systems, to long, exhausting, accident-prone hours. Though, true, it was also an incognito no enemy would quickly penetrate. Once free to move, they must find Ungari, the man with the credit cards and the contacts. After that, Gregor would be Ungari's problem, eh? Yes, all simple, right and tight. God, it's just so, like, breezy, like, his plan. It's just like, oh, this would be ideal. At the end of these 2 chapters, no.
And then the book ended.
Yeah, they win. Gregor announces that they've left. The guards have left. Miles crawls out of his hole. And Gregor is surprised that the shock sticks didn't hurt that much. And Miles explains that it was on the lowest setting. He says they should go look for Ungari when they get to Aslan Station. And Gregor is planning to get word to the Barryaran consulate, though he kind of regrets not being able to keep running.
I was gonna, with the chalk sticks, I was gonna say that when I read it, I was like, oh, is it like one of those things where if you use a weapon, you have to get it used on you? But I guess that the army wouldn't really have a use for shock sticks anyway, so it wouldn't be relevant.
Unless they were military police, I guess.
Yeah, I suppose if they were having like some kind of crowd control. But I was wondering, like, do you think that people in Barrayar, they are required to feel how the shock stick feels? Is it like in Sweden, if you want to have license for pepper spray, you have to put pepper spray in your eye so that you know how it feels.
Jesus. Wow. Our politicians should have to take some CZ gas in the face. CS, one of those. I was thinking as you were talking that like I knew a guy who was in the army, and one of the things that made him quit was the gas mask like trial, where they won't let you put on your gas mask, or like you have to last in there for 21 seconds or whatever, and then you can put on your mask and get out.
What
And
kind
he
of
didn't
gas?
make it. They wouldn't tell him.
Ah.
So who the hell knows?
But was it hurtful, or what kind of feeling did he get?
He said it was terrible. He
Mm.
couldn't last. It was awful. He didn't go into the details.
Mm.
Obviously, it wasn't nerve gas because he's still with us. But what kind of side effects it had, or anything long-lasting effects?
Should I read this one then?
Please do. One thing is certain.
So yeah, this is the one where Gregor says that he should maybe keep running.
Yeah.
Or kind of like, I think that what he talks about is like to get to the consulate, and then it's like, oh, but my other plan was to not go to the consulate. And then he says, one thing is certain, an opportunity like this will never come again. To escape? And just how many would die back home to buy your freedom? Gregor pursed his lips. Taking Vordarian's pretendership as a benchmark for a palace coup, say 7,000 or 8,000. You're not counting in Komar.
Oh, man. Yeah, Komar is an entire planet, not just a few provinces. The listener, obviously, if they're new to the Vorkosigan saga, doesn't know. But that pretendership, so-called, wasn't all that long ago. It was like in living memory.
Yeah, and Gregor lost his mom in that.
Yeah, and we definitely know that the Komar Rebellion wasn't that long ago either. Metsov was in it. Where he had his redacted crime or whatever. Gregor wishes he could do more as emperor. He feels constrained. And Miles says he should practice using his power, make some good decisions. And Gregor is like, nah, I agree. And, Ensign, if I, your supreme commander, ordered you to leave this ship at Aslan Station and forget you ever saw me, would you? Miles swallowed. Major Cecil said I had a problem with subordination. To me, this is like two brothers or like cousins talking shit, but in the most urbane way.
Yeah. Yeah, he traps Miles there. Like, okay, so
Yeah.
do you
Yeah,
follow my
totally.
orders?
It's like when's the last time you beat your wife kind of thing. It's like, ooh, don't ask me these questions. This is fucked up. Gregor moans about not being good enough to avoid bad situations in the past, and Miles responds saying that he survived Vordrozda and Hessman, and he knows he won't make that same mistake again. But then he muses about Gregor's fall and all that.
Yeah. Just how intentional had a topple of the balcony been? Miles gritted his teeth. I didn't answer your question about orders as an ensign. I answered it as Lord Vorkosigan and a friend. Ah, look, you don't need my rescue, such as it is. Ilians, maybe, not mine. But it makes me feel better. It's always nice to feel useful, Gregor agreed. They mirrored edged smiles. Gregor's smile lost its bitter bite. And it's nice to have company. Miles nodded. That truly.
Oh, that's sweet. Again, like bros or homies, like long-term friends, you know, they can vacillate from like giving each other shit to like having an emotional bonding moment. On the way to the station, Gregor shares meals with Miles. He insists on an even split meal-wise. They get to the station. This is Aslan Station, and Gregor goes to work. Miles slips out wearing his blue smock and pants. He marches past a house fell guard who's acting confident. Oh, that's who's guarding the ship that he's escaping from onto the station. That's one thing about this book that I feel like is too realistic. Like, it's kind of annoying that like at every step of the way they have to pass another guard. But it's like that's really how it is in serious situations like preparing for war.
Why do you feel it's too realistic? Like it's like too
Oh, just
much
that it's like
attention to
real
it?
tense and it
Yeah.
like kind of slows down the pace because they have to like, we got to deal with this, you know, here's another guard.
I guess you could yada yada it. You could be like, he slipped the guard, and then he was
Yeah,
leaving there.
totally. So he sees lots of blue-suited Aslander military workers, but no obvious guards. He discovers that the military station is unconnected to the commercial transfer station.
Yeah,
Which is
so they
kind of a
can't get
bummer.
to the consulate then.
Yeah, without a shuttle. So a supervisor just wanders over and commands him to do some work for him. Miles goes along. He asks Miles what his specialization is. He responds, drains. And that's like a fun callback because, you know, Kirill Island. He gets sent behind the walls to find a leak in a pipe. And as he's going down, he accidentally kicks right through a wall panel. There's some guys out there who are pissed. He claims to be a quality control inspector. And then he heads back and talks to his supervisor. And I just like this little Miles bullshit. Your leak's in Section 6, Miles reported. He handed the man his panel chunk. If those corridor panels are supposed to be made of flammable fiberboard instead of spun silica on a military installation planned to withstand enemy fire, somebody's hired a real poor designer. If they're not, I suggest you take a couple of those big goons with the shock sticks and go pay a visit to your supplier.
It's a little bit of a design subplot.
Yeah, it's giving America invading Iraq vibes, like, or whatever bullshit we were up to in 1990. I guess we just come out of Desert Storm.
Just because it's like fucking up the station.
Oh, just the like their supplier might have been corrupt or like at least bad. Or it could be like somebody ordered shitty materials, which is also suggests corruption or incompetence.
Yeah, maybe they changed the order.
Yeah, and government, at least our government, is famous for letting contractors get away with murder. Usually not literally, but it was alleged that Halliburton let like 14 people get electrocuted on a job site or whatever. I don't know, whatever came of that. So Miles dips out of there and wanders until he sees two people in gray Dendarii uniforms. So he's stoked that they're on station. He decides to look for Elena. He realizes he hasn't heard from her or her husband Baz since Oser took back control from him and Tung, which happened while he was away. Thinking about Elena, he recalls how much he loved her. He remembers her father, Sergeant Bothari. He thinks about how well she knew Gregor and would understand the need to get him to safety. He's looking around for a way to be inconspicuous, so he steals this guy's tools and masquerades like a worker. He goes down a corridor on the way to the cafeteria, and he kind of looks busy. And then he goes inside the wall to disguise his height, and he's like banging around a bit. He
Yeah.
doesn't see any. Oh, go ahead.
No, it's just gonna fill in like with the control panel. It would be funny if he had broken it because he was just like pretending to fix it, and then it's all the lights are out or something.
Oh yeah, yeah, that's good. I like that. So he's banging around a bit. He doesn't see any Dendarii for a while. Then he sees a couple, but doesn't recognize them. And he's thinking about his whole group, and he realizes he can only really count on 5 of them. Who was it? Elena, Tongue, Birdie, Belle, Ellie, Quinn, and Baz Jessic. Right? Is that 5?
I'm not sure.
Artie Mayhew.
Yeah, he would be
pilot?
2, but I feel like maybe there are more than 5 then.
Yeah. Maybe he's not counting Tongue because he's part of this whole political shakeup.
Yeah, probably.
Trying to use him. So Miles spots Chodak. He decides to trust him. They converse.
Chodak hissed, "Are you insane? What are you doing here?" It was a mark of agitation that he omitted his habitual "sir." "It's a long story. For now, I need your help." "But how did you get in here? Admiral Oser has guards all over the transfer station, on the lookout for you. You couldn't smuggle in a sand flea." Miles smirked convincingly. "I have my methods."
Smooth. And he's just doing his Naismith bullshit. It's a long story.
Tang talks about this later, that he's like, "Oh, your accidents are so envious." So it's the same here. It's like, "Oh, I accidentally came here, but I'm gonna pretend like it was some secret plan." And now Shodak is like, "What? How did he even get in here?"
So great. It's like he's riding on the winds of coincidence and just chaos. So Miles learns that the Triumph is there at the station, which means Elena is there. Baz is out doing repairs among the fleet, I think. Miles asks Chodak to tell Elena that Miles and Greg Bleakman are there and how to find Greg's quarters. Then he moves on. He locates Gregor's quarters, and he tells him that he got a message off to Elena, and he's hoping that Elena can find Ungari, because he's possibly over at the transfer station. And Gregor reveals that his job is pretty easy, doing light fixtures and shit. Oh, this is me. Gregor seemed all right anyway. Indeed, the Emperor was acting almost cheerful about his stint as a slave laborer, as Gregor's morose standards of cheer went. Maybe we ought to send him to the salt mines for 2 weeks every year to keep him happy and content with his regular job. Miles relaxed a little.
I wonder if it's one of those problems, when you have a job and you don't really see the direct benefits, because you're so bogged up in bureaucracy. So then it's like, "Oh, now I can fix the light," and it feels like satisfying compared to just sealing a bunch of documents and standing around.
Yeah, I mean, it's like rich people don't do a lot of important shit, Like we pay a CEO 500 times as much as the janitor, but like who's working harder, And Gregor, even no matter how good he is, things are pretty relaxed at home.
Yeah, but even, I don't know necessarily relaxed, but it's just going to be a lot of symbolic work. Like he's talking about how he
Yeah.
only is a figurehead and he only like if he was replaced by a mannequin, people wouldn't notice. So I think it's like part of that he doesn't feel like I'm sure he has a busy schedule, but it's not anything that feels like it directly impacts anything.
Yeah. It's like, what else do rich people do to get that feeling? Meditation, gardening.
I'm feeling like they would do some kind of charity, you know? So they would be like, oh, I
Charity,
have
yep.
this like charity. So maybe he should have like an orphanage or something. Then he could come and be like, oh, look at all these orphans that I'm feeding.
I heard about this wild rich person that got really into hydroplane races. And like, it was just, yeah, to get the thrill of being alive. Jeff Bezos flew into space for a little while just to get it.
Yeah. But no, I think I would say get an orphanage. And then he could come there and, you know, be like humble and work there. And then he would enjoy it.
Yeah, because nobody there would be allowed to treat him like the emperor because they don't know any better. Plus, like, he has a good time.
Yeah.
Oh, there's
Mm?
a bit in Altered Carbon, season 1, in which a character sort of has one of those performative go among the people scenes. Yeah, that's a thing people do. But they love
Mm.
their banquets and their yachting galas. What are those called? Regattas.
Mm.
They love a regatta.
Barrier has an ocean. They could do a regatta there.
Oh hell yeah. I think we've heard about sailing as a thing there. Gregor can't think of Elena as a mercenary. And it gets Miles, like Miles responds or whatever, but then he's like he knows how capable she is. But he also starts thinking about how 4 years is a long time and one could change in that time. Like, would he still know who she is? Like, because she changed that much, kind of thing. And then a bunch of goons arrive at their quarters, like a half dozen or something, or 10, like a bunch.
Then Miles himself was jerked from the bunk to be coiled, triple coiled, in a tangle net. The field burned against him. They were using enough power to mobilize a plunging horse. What do you think I am, boys?
This poor guy takes so much abuse. So Miles and Gregor are dragged out of there, dragged down the hall. He sees Chodak down the hall looking strained, like poking out at him, but alcove or something. And Miles berates himself for trusting him. They get dragged onto the Triumph, Oser's flagship. And yeah, he's like having nostalgia, I think, about the old ship. The corridors of the ship had a strange, painful, powerful familiarity. The odors of men, metal, and machinery. That crooked archway, legacy of the lunatic ramming that had captured her on Miles's first encounter, still not properly straightened out. I thought I had forgotten more. I like that. Like, the memories come flooding back, but like they're so specific. They say that whenever you have a memory, it's a memory of a memory. If that makes any sense. Like, it redraws it in your mind. So maybe
Yeah,
it's like deja vu almost, where like your brain thinks it's the same or it's more truer than ever, but nostalgia is essentially suspect.
yeah. I mean, but this one feels like it's still a real memory if it's connected to this. But
Oh
maybe
yeah,
it's
it's only
like,
been 4 years.
yeah.
The way she writes it feels like he's describing a painting or like
Mm.
like it's home to him kind of.
That's true. It's the whole sense of it. It's not just like, oh, I remember this wall or something. It's more like the memories generally come back to him.
Miles puts on his Naismith persona. He's worried about how he's going to explain Gregor and all that. And Oser and his lieutenant bring them into a briefing room to interrogate Miles. They've got a couple guards, I think. One or two.
Still lean and hawk-faced. Dark hair, maybe a little grayer at the temples. Miles had remembered him as taller, but he was actually shorter than Metzel. Also reminded Miles somehow of the general. Was it the age, the build, the hostile glover, the murderous pinpricks of red light in the eyes?
Yeah, he describes him like Darth Vader or something.
Yeah, does he have red eyes? That seems weird.
Maybe that's like an optical illusion with the lighting or something.
Yeah, do they have like
nobody has red light in there? Oh, maybe they have like cybernetic lenses.
Yeah, maybe he has like some kind of lenses, like you said, like it's some kind of computer lenses, or maybe it's all red lighting in this ship. It's not like in other sci-fi where it's always blue lighting.
Yeah, I like it. And Metsov always has a red light just to give him a menacing like feel, you know.
Maybe he has a UV light, you know, to keep him give him vitamin D.
Maybe he has an iguana in his office.
That would be funny. It's just like I'm imagining a movie or something, and he has like red light, and then you like pan around and you see like the iguana and the light.
That's a real like Top Secret joke. Did you ever see Top Secret?
No, I don't know it.
It's I think it's by the people that made Airplane. It's got Val Kilmer, and they're the French Resistance, and it's just got so many silly jokes. It's like a live action Simpsons that way. Mm-hmm. But one of them, there's like a giant phone in the corner of the shot, and the Nazis are in the back, like on a war table type thing or whatever. And then the phone rings and the guy comes forward and you realize that it's like a giant phone. Just perspective joke. Let's see. Gregor asks how Miles pissed Oster off. And Miles is like, I didn't mean to, man. It just sort of shook out that way. Oser asks Miles why he's on the station, and he says he was hired to evaluate the Hagen hub by a third party, and he's also doing a little arms trading on the side. Oser asks about Barryar's interest in all this, and Miles discounts their involvement. He has good reasons or whatever. Oser is also wondering about Sita Ganda, and Miles suggests that's a valid concern. Barryar is no threat to Aslan in this generation. To control the Hagen hub, Barryar must control Paul. With the terraforming of their own second continent, plus the opening of the planet Surgyar, Barryar is rather oversupplied with frontiers at present. And then there is the problem of holding restive Komar. A military adventure towards Pole would be a serious overextension of Barryar's human resources now. Cheaper to be friends, or at least neutral. That was my Naismith voice, in case it didn't come across.
We have to do the same voices for everyone, so we have to like give some kind of voice script to ourselves.
Yeah. So Miles mentions that his next stop is Vervain. Oser says he could kill him as a spy legitimately, and Miles is like, yeah, but a friendly spy. Or possibly even an ally.
He's like I'm not a spy because I'm not your enemy. So
yeah. So Oser asks if he's planning to rejoin the fleet. Instead, Miles asks about Aslan, And Oser is reluctant to share any information.
Oh, come on, Miles scoffed in the lengthening silence. What could I do by myself with one man? I remember the last time you entered Tau Verde local space with a staff of 4. 4 months later, you were dictating terms. So what are you planning now? You overestimate my impact. I merely help people along in the direction they wish to go. An expeditor, so to speak. Not for me. I spent 3 years recovering the ground I lost in my own fleet.
What a baby. Covering the ground I lost.
I wonder if that's why part of like when Miles thinks he reminds him of Metsov, that he's thinking like they both kind of unimaginative and stuck in just their own ideas.
But also selfish and driven by pride. Ego. Let's see. Miles says he made things better. Oser asks who Gregor is. Miles says he's his Batman. Oser says he looks like an officer.
And Gregor is so happy about this.
Miles never once said, Gregor, you gotta chill. Like in See No Evil, Hear No Evil, Richard Pryor says to Gene Wilder as they're entering prison, he's like, you gotta get bad, Jack. You got, this is a Blue joke. Check it out yourself. You gotta get bad, Jack. So anyway, he's like strutting. He should have told Gregor, you gotta act like, just a regular guy, enlisted man. It's funny, there's such a narrow difference between an enlisted guy and an officer. Maybe it's like how many muscles they have. I don't know.
I feel like it would be hard for Gregor to not... Like, I think it's about, kind of being conscious about the appearance you give. And I think that it would be hard for him to not be that.
Yeah, an officer can suss out an officer for sure.
I wouldn't know.
So Miles mentions tongue, and he realizes, oof, that was a bad idea. Oser is not amused. By the sick lurch in his belly, Miles realized that mentioning tongue had been a major mistake. He tried to keep his features coolly ironic, not reflecting his unease. If I'd been in correspondence with tongue, I should not have been troubled with making this personal evaluation of Aslan Station. Which is a good point, right? What's he doing here if he's planning a revolution with tongue? He should be with tongue, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or somewhere hidden where Oser can't get to him. Oser says to space Gregor and Miles is just freaking out. And this is a long one, but it's fantastic.
Yeah. You, the pointing finger, collected Oser's silent lieutenant. Go with them. See that it's done. Use the port side access lock. It's closest. If he, pointed to Miles, starts to talk, stop his tongue. It's his most dangerous organ. The guard released the tangle field from Miles's legs and pulled him to his feet. Aren't you even going to have me chemically interrogated? Asked Miles, dizzied by this sudden downturn. And contaminate my interrogators? The last thing I want is to give you reins to talk. To anyone. I can think of nothing more fatal than for the rot of disloyalty to start in my own intelligence section. Whatever your planned speech, removing your air will neutralize it. You nearly convinced me. Oser almost shuddered.
Oh, man.
We talked about the near-death stuff, but I guess this will come a little bit later. But I was going to say that
this whole thing, like he could die at any time, just on this guy's whim.
But I think this is the third one, the third near death of the story. And actually, I was thinking this is my favorite one because it's something like so, I'm not sure how to put it. It's like, we would call it snopet in Swedish. I don't know what it would be in English. Maybe I could check it. Um, so it's like he's just like talking with Oso, like da, da, and I was just like, no, kill him, and it's
Just end the conversation with something bad.
yeah. I mean, it's more just that it's so abrupt, and I don't think he ever felt like he was really in danger of dying at this point. I think that he was just assuming, like, oh, I can just get out of this. I can convince him, like, yeah.
Jesus. So they drag Miles and Gregor out. Gregor's like, well, this isn't going well. And then Gregor starts to resist, right? Because what do they say? Like, where there's life, there's hope. We got to slow down the execution as long as you can.
Yeah.
And Gregor calls the guards peasants. Which I'm like, not a great look there. And then Miles follows his lead and he starts talking ransom. Oh, go ahead.
No, you're doing it too quickly. Like, we have to talk. This is the good stuff.
This is the good stuff.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, like, about the killing itself, that it's somehow it's so silly. Like, the idea they're not killed because they have done something specific or something. It's just also being like, no, I don't want to deal with this. Like, it's so petty somehow. That's why I think it's funny.
Yeah. Just killing two guys because they annoy him. Their very existence threatens him.
And but like, I mean, if you had told Oser from the start that who Gregor was, then he wouldn't probably have spaced them, or at least like not without. Like, maybe he would have kept Gregor and only spaced Miles.
Yeah, he would have spaced Miles. Not a great option too, but it's better than nothing, I guess.
Yeah. And it's also, I mean, it's somehow also a little bit silly, like, that he is gonna space him. He could have just killed him in his office, but he's just like, no, I don't want to, like, I don't know. It feels like if I were to explain it, I would say something like, he kind of is taken in by Miles. So he's like, no, he just has to be out of my sight, because I can't trust myself to just, like, not be tricked by him. So he's like, he's more about, like, just take him out of here than he is like, kill him immediately. Yeah, okay, now I'm done.
I think airlock is free though, whereas bullets or stunners,
no, if they have the nerve disruptor, I think it's only some electricity, right? Or do you think that they have to be charged? They're like, oh, we're out of nerve.
They have to plug in their USB cord at the end of the night.
Yeah. That would be funny if it ran out of energy. I don't think it ever happens, actually. And then you have to, like, shake it, like.
Oh, yes. That's good. So Miles is trying to save his life. He called out loudly, you fellows are about to throw a fortune in ransom out the airlock. Two guards kept wrestling with Gregor, but the third paused. How big a fortune? Huge, Miles promised. Buy your own fleet.
Yeah, and then one of the lieutenants is like, okay, and then it tries to cut off Miles's tongue because
Jesus.
Oser said so. But I think it would be really hard. Like, you couldn't hold someone's tongue, right? Or is it just my grip is too weak?
I feel like there's an intermediate step there where you have to, like, put your arms around both of the other guy's arms and, like, put a knife to his neck and then put your fingers in his face or whatever. Like, it's a complicated procedure. And I feel like it showed a lot of hubris on the guy's part to think he could shove his fingers in a guy's mouth and wouldn't go badly.
Yeah, but I just also feel like I don't think that you could physically hold a tongue with your fingers. I feel like your fingers are not I don't know, somehow like the tongue is too flexible. It's not something that you can grab like that.
I think you're underestimating the determination of a committed killer to do something awful like that. Like, and he's probably got gloves on or something, you know?
Oh yeah, okay, if he has gloves,
He's
then
got his tongue cutting gloves.
yeah, they're all like minimum friction
Yeah, you
or
got him at
maximum
Home
friction.
Depot
Yeah.
or Big Five Sporting Goods, maybe. Where do you get tongue slashing gloves?
And also, okay, so I was thinking first, do you think that they could regrow the tongue in this universe? And then I was thinking that you can actually talk without a tongue. I think that's like one of those fantasy um, myths that is like if you lose your tongue, you can't talk. You can still talk. But I think that he would be distracted by all the blood, so that would probably be useful for them.
It would certainly stop him from talking in this 2 minutes or
Yeah.
whatever. The last 2 minutes of his life. So he bites the guy's fingers and twists him around. Gregor follows suit, doing some punchy kicks. Someone steps out of the shadows and stuns all three of these goons. It's Sergeant Chodak, redeemed!
Damn fine soldiering. Miles panted to Sergeant Chodak in the sudden silence. I don't think they even saw what hit them. So I called him straight the first time. Haven't lost my touch after all. Bless you, Sergeant.
Yeah. He keeps all that in the thought bubble there, the second part. You can't go telling your men that you distrusted them for a minute. You don't want to make them feel bad. And that's the end of chapter 10. Chapter 11 starts with Elena showing up, just looking totally badass and professional. She's cut her hair a bit. Looks great. She's cut her hair, Miles thought. Stupid stunned. Gone was the straight, shining black cascade to her waist. Now it was clipped out over her ears, only little dark points grace-noting her high cheekbones and forehead. A similar point echoed at the nape of her neck. Severe, practical, very smart, soldierly. Am I wrong, or is the nape of the neck in the front and not the back?
No, I think the nape of the neck is the back.
It's where your neck meets your head.
Yeah, I think
Okay,
so.
I've got that wrong. Very smart, soldierly. Yeah. She looks great. He's always kind of idolized her, put her on a pedestal.
Yeah, and it's funny. This is like he's like all awed by her haircut. It's like it's normal. Probably she just went to like the ship barber and like cut or whatever.
Yeah,
I
she
don't
went to
care about my hair.
Supercuts, spent $10 on a do.
Yeah. Do you think that they have a hairdresser? They must have in the fleet. Or do you think that they're like, oh, now I have to cut my hair on the planet and then just leave?
Yeah, at least in the fleet. Yeah, maybe even one on each ship, or robots. Could you get a robot
hair
haircut?
cutting robots.
It's like Floby Extreme. It's like a reverse laser printer. It cuts your hair like in rather than building out. Or it could build out with extensions. Yeah. Okay. Robotic replicator hair cutter. That's what I want.
I now want all of the like practical people that they have to have with them. So they're like, oh, we have the hairdresser, we have like I don't know, like doctors of different kinds, like skin doctor or something. It's just like having to
just
deal
the regular
with warts.
civilian stuff.
Yeah.
Elena asks if the guards are dead. Chodak says they're just stunned. She ponders spacing them, and Miles says no, let's hide them instead. Elena tells the guards to go on ahead and clear their escape path, and then split entirely. The guards seem really stoked to see Naismith. They're like eyeballing him as they leave. So the three friends loot the goons for their uniforms and their money and stuff, and they chat a bit.
It's really you. Elena shook her head in dismay. What are you doing here? It was a mistake, said Gregor. No lie. Whose? Mine, I'm afraid, said Miles. Somewhat to his annoyance, Gregor did not gainsay this.
Miles is always like, come on, back me up, people. Say what's really going on. But instead, you got to put it on me, Gregor. You dick. So Miles looting the guys, and then he says, we got a dip. He eats a ration bar. If you were going to have a ration bar, what flavor would you want in this situation?
I feel like a lot of times this kind of instant food is too flavorful. Like, because, or it's not the flavor, but it's always so sweet. And I'm like, I don't need it to be sweet. Just have like normal food. Like, it's always like, oh, it's with chocolate and sugary stuff. And then like, you can just have it be plain. Like, I don't need everything to be sweet all the time. So I would have like an what would they call it? Something that is like without flavor, just to be like, oh, I don't need anything.
I believe we call that hunk of nougat.
I haven't had that one. It sounds too flavorful if there's nougat in it.
Hunk of muesli.
I'm thinking like something like oatmeal taste, and it's only like oatmeal.
I kind of want a lemon bar. Like, it's future food, right? So they can pack all the vitamins in without it tasting bad. So I want a lemon bar or like a chocolate mousse. You know, something. I like it sweet. So they get to the docking bay. They load into the shuttle, and the guards split. Inside the shuttle, we got Artie Mayhew, the pilot, and Kai Tung is there. Or is it Key? The audio guy said Key.
Key? Oh, I would have thought it was Kai, but yeah. I couldn't remember from the audio book.
Hello, son.
Maybe it's like with the Swedish E. So it's like Key. I will call him Key.
Key. Hello, son. Key Tung's smile was far more ironic than cheerful. Welcome back. You took your sweet time. Tung, arms folded, did not salute. Hello, Key. Miles nodded to the Eurasian. Tung had not changed anyway. Still looked any age between 40 and 60. Still built like an ancient tank. Still seemed to see more than he spoke. Most uncomfortable for the guilty of conscience.
I realized that we're not going to get Key's first name anymore, so now we will not have to think about how to pronounce it.
Oh, it's all Tung from here on out?
Yeah, I think so.
I like it. I just love Tung so much. Like, he's an Errol Vorkosigan fanboy. You know? I don't love how up for assassination he is. That's a little worrying, but other than that, he's great. So Artie Mayhew gets the go-ahead to leave the station. So on the way, Tung explains that they plan to take Miles to the aerial and start a revolt. But this way gives them more time to plan. And Tung asks Miles, what is your plan? And he explains he's there by accident. These are the accidents you were talking about before.
Yeah. And it's just like, he has so... Oh, yeah, I guess we're coming to this. So then I have to do this tongue voice now? It was so dark.
You don't have to. I can do it.
I will do like... Tongue pursed his lips. Accident? Maybe. Your accidents, I once noticed, have ways of entangling your enemies that are the green envy of mature and careful strategists. Far too consistent for chance. I concluded it had to be unconscious will. If only you stuck with me, son. Between us, we could have... Or maybe you are simply a supreme opportunist, in which case I direct your attention to the opportunity now before you to retake the Dendarai mercenaries. It's funny that he calls them the Dendarai, because he knows that this is Miles.
This is his real plan, which is to bring Naismith back into the fold. So, of course, he's playing to his vanity by bringing back the old name.
Yeah.
Because I don't think he has a sentimental attachment to the name, other than it's not Oser.
No, I don't know that he prefers one or the other. I guess he likes Miles, but I think that it's mostly about his own demotion.
Yeah. So Miles is like, why don't you do it? Tongue says it won't work. He doesn't have enough control over the ships. I tried to give you a fleet in trade, said Miles, harried. How'd you lose control of it, old strategist? Tongue tapped a finger to his left breast to indicate a touche. Things went well at first. For a year and a half after we departed Tau Verde. Got 2 sweet little contracts in a row out toward the Eastnet. Small-scale commando operations. Sure things. Well, not too sure. Kept us on our toes. But we brought them off. Miles glanced at Elena. I'd heard about those, yes. And then Elena starts talking? Or is this still Tongue? I kind of cut this one off. On the third, we got into troubles. Baz Jessic had got... Oh, no, it's still him. Baz Jessic had gotten more and more involved with equipment and maintenance. He's a good engineer. So basically, Baz was he was in the shop all the time. He wasn't doing politics. We're focusing on the business side. Oser managed to find them a boring blockade job. And Tongue got bored because it wasn't combat. Elena says to Tongue, like she's just giving him the business. She's like, you should have got rid of him when he tried to seduce me, a married woman. And Tongue he's kind of going with his no harm, no foul thing, where he's like, yeah, I mean, you're hot. Like, who wouldn't hit on you? And then like, and she's like, I'm married. Did you miss that part? Like,
Yeah, it was for Tongue. He was like, oh, I didn't think it was a big deal. And she's like, no, this means he's disloyal. Like, and I think this is her barrier and what do you call it? Like her barrier and upbringing, that she maybe wouldn't be so happy about knowing that she's like has all these feelings about like the personal loyalty, and the oaths and stuff that they are very important to her.
Yeah. Yeah, the traditional like weight of oaths, loyalty, and then virtue, like the moral commandments, like her dad and Vorkosigan probably were on about, like you have to have honor.
Yeah. So should I read this part, but with Tongue?
Sure, yeah.
He did take no for an answer, he said. Tongue excused himself. If he'd kept leading on you, I'd have been willing to step in. I thought you ought to be flattered. Ignore it and go on. Overtures of that sort contains a judgment on my character that I find anything but flattering. Thank you. Elena snapped. And I think it's like, of course, part of it's like misogyny, but then it's also like her, Tongue is kind of like, marriage's marriage, just, but she's like, no, it's an oath that I took.
Yeah, shit matters to me. Not to mention Baz Jessic is the engineer. He's like right down the road, right down the hall. So it's basically like saying, hey, do you want a bunch of drama in your life? Let's do this.
That's true. And it is like the idea that Baz was his commander, that he would just do something like that to him, that it was also very disloyal.
So Miles figures that he was testing her to see if she would break his way, which would help him politically. Tung says he managed to get a majority of the ship owners to go his way. And Elena tried to explain that Naismith might not be back, but Tung was acting as if he thought Naismith was coming back. And then Tung pitches his deal. Side with me and we'll take back the fleet. I can put over 100 loyal officers and non-coms at your back at a word, said Tung to Miles. 4 ships. Why not at your own back? If I could, I would have already. But I'm not going to tear the fleet apart unless I can be certain of putting it back together again. All of it. But with you as leader, with your reputation, which has grown in the retelling. Just gassing up Miles.
Yeah, Miles is very suspicious. He's like, oh, here's one the figurehead that like all the bullets can go to.
Yes. So Tung suggests assassinating Oser, and Miles is like, dude, hold on now. It's not a great idea. He's not here to start a big civil war. And Tung is like, well, what would you rather be doing? And he's like, he's trying to stop a civil war or like an inter-system war. And Tung is worried that they might be on the doomed side. And then Miles is like, nope, we're going to Vervain.
Oh, yeah. You're working for the Verbani? Tung asked. No. Who then? Tung's hands twitched. So tense with his curiosity, they seemed to want to squeeze out information by main force. Elena noticed the unconscious gesture too. Key, back off, she said sharply. If Miles wants Vervain, he shall have.
I love that so much. That's how you respect your liege lord. It's like, they want this thing, that's what we're doing. Tung wants to know why Mayhew and Elena back Miles. And she's like, we're oath sworn. And he goes, is this a chain of command or a chain of credulity?
And Miles like, what's the difference?
So Tung makes his case for Miles' help that it'll be good for everyone. And then Gregor chimes in. Miles looked with anguish at Elena, picturing her quite vividly in light of his recent experiences, being shoved out an airlock by evil, witless goons. Tung noted with satisfaction the effect of his plea on Miles, and sat smugly back. Elena glared at Tung. Gregor stirred uneasily. I think you should become refugees on our behalf. Elena, Miles saw, heard that official capital O too, as Tung and Mayhew, of course, could not. We can see that you do not suffer, financially at least. I don't know why whenever Gregor talks, I just think he's like holding up a finger, shaking it.
I think in this instance, like you did a more finger shaking voice, but it makes sense that he would be like, okay, now I'm talking as the emperor, not with Miles.
Totally.
And it's funny though that I guess now he is a little bit less undercover, but it's funny the idea that he would just be like, oh, I have to be undercover. And then it's just like, I am the emperor.
Let's see. Tung asks about Gregor, like, who's this guy? What's up? And Elena is closed-mouthed. They discuss the plan is to get a commercial shuttle to Vervain. Tung thinks it can be done. So they decide to go to Vervain. Oh, Tung thinks that the revolution could work if he stays, and that it's, the right thing to do. And they decide to go to Vervain instead.
It's funny also that we as readers are for me, I wouldn't have been. It's like we are so expected that they would be part of this revolution. So it almost feels like a waste of time to just be like, no, we're not doing that. We're gonna like go somewhere else. And but it makes perfect sense that that's what they would decide to do. But it just feels, from our expectations, it almost feels illogical.
Yeah. Yeah. So the five of them get to the Aslan transfer station. Tung and Mayhew head in to see what they can do, and the other three stay on the ship. Miles wonders if one can choose not to fall in love again with Elena.
Bah.
Okay, I did once kind of fall for a lady, and then I found out she was getting married, and it's like been weird ever since.
Mm.
But I don't have to work with her, and she has an oath sworn to me. So, awkward. So he asks if Tung has been teaching her the business, being her mentor. And she says yes and starts rattling off all the stuff he's teaching her. But still there's some tension between her and Tung for various reasons. And then Miles asks about Baz.
He's well, she replied, not looking happy, but discouraged. This power struggle was alien to him, repugnant, I think. He's a tech at heart. He sees a job that needs doing, he does it. Tung hints that if Baz hadn't burned himself in engineering, he might have foreseen, prevented, fought the takeover. But I think it was the other way around. He couldn't lower himself to fight on Oser's backstabbing level, so he withdrew to where he could keep his own standards of honesty for a little while longer.
God, I could listen to Elena talk all day. Like, she just gets to the damn point and seems to know. Well, certainly she knows her husband and his way of thinking.
Mm.
So that's really great.
Yeah. And I also think that I guess probably Miles should not have made him the commander then. If it's like, oh, I don't like dishonesty. Like, he's not dishonest enough.
Mercenaries, famous for their honesty.
Yeah.
I gotta get some water. I'll be right back. So Elena gets serious. She and Baz thought that Miles should have come back by, or much earlier. And Baz thought that he must have failed Miles, and that's why he wasn't coming back. She also says that she isn't crazy about being a mercenary, but at least it's a way to serve Barrayar.
Yeah, or it was, if that was the setup, but not anymore.
Miles asks about Oser. What does Oser serve? Gregor asked curiously, brows raised at this mixed declamation about their home world. Oser serves Oser. The fleet, he says, but the fleet serves Oser, so it's just a short circuit, said Elena. The fleet is no home country. No building, no children. Sterile. I don't mind helping out the Aslanders, though. They need it. A poor planet, and scared.
Yeah. And I think I like also the other quote when Miles says, like, you and Baz and Artie could have left, gone off on your own, began Miles. And Elena replies, how, said Elena. You gave us the Dendaria in charge. Baz was a deserter once, never again. And Miles is like, all my fault, thanks.
Yeah, she's like, dude, you gave us an order. You're our liege lord. That end of story. Like, this is what we have to do.
I feel though, like, yeah, it is kind of rude that maybe because he left and he really was like, oh, I gave you this in charge. And then it seems though like a little bit weird that I feel like if they wrote back to him and they were like, oh, are we still in charge? And then if he doesn't reply within like 6 months, then I think it's void. Then you're like, okay, no. No
I
orders.
like that as a rule change. I'm not sure if Barry R is ready for that yet.
Yeah. It just seems like funny that they were just like, oh, you're still in charge of us, and Miles is off and be like, no, they're just like off on their own. They are not obeying me. Like I feel like that's such an uneven dynamic. It is. I feel bad for them that they're just like, oh, we can't disappoint Miles, so he's like back home, just not even thinking that they are still working for him.
I think they could have at least sent an email that's like, yo, I mean, we could go be gardeners somewhere. Like, this is getting a little hot. Are you down with
That's
that?
true.
But they chose, like, not to make that phone call. you know?
That's true. And maybe it is their fault then. But I don't know. Could he have replied if they had messaged him? Because we know that Elena had sent him at least one private message. So yeah, I think they could have reached him if they wanted to, and he would be like, yeah, I leave. It's fine.
Would his comms have been monitored at the academy and so he couldn't talk shop with them?
Yeah.
I can't remember if he was in communication with them business wise or if it was just personal stuff.
No, it was only personal. It was like he had like one message from Elena that was just a personal one, which was at least the latest one. Maybe they had some practical communication before that. But I also think it's interesting after this that Gregor, yeah, Elena asked if he and Gregor are on diplomatic mission, and then Gregor is like, oh, Miles tells Gregor to explain why they're here, and Gregor is just like, like Bass, I deserted. Like Bass, I found it was not the improvement I'd hoped for. And I think that this part is like really interesting because like if you see how he replies to Elena, this is not at all what he said to Miles. To Miles he was like, oh, I ran away and I kind of still want to run away. Like I have not regretted it really. Like and I feel like with this, when Bujold she tries to like explore Gregor in this book, to portray him like his inner mind. I think that this one is like a real important part of it because he's saying this to Elena. He's like, "Oh, look, like you were sympathetic to Bass, so you should be sympathetic to me." And I think that it shows that he is so conscious about what everyone expects from him. Like he's very good at like saying what is expected, and saying the things that people will approve of. And I wonder if that is then a part of why he wanted to run away because he doesn't have a really good sense of self. He's like so good at just saying whatever anyone wants of him. And I think that maybe that's why it's hard for him when people have so many expectations because he can't really help but to cater to them, I suppose. He's like very instinctual in doing that.
Yeah, he's been trained since birth to be virtuous and honorable, but also he's been trained by the smartest guy on Barry R to always think and talk on multiple levels, right? He's achieving all these different things by his word choices, even though Elena is basically his sister in a way, like they grew up in proximity at least. So he can just straight talk with her, but he's also saying like, I'm not prosecuting your husband for being a deserter, but I was judging him, and now I get it. And I'm not quite going to tell you that I'm going to keep running, and that's fine. It's almost like holding out an olive branch, like if you'd like to pursue this further, you know?
No, the way that I see it is that he he's not at all honest with her. Like he could have said, "Yeah, I ran away," and but he knows, like, he could say what is his state of mind. He could be like, I ran away, I don't want to go back. Like, that's how I feel, but I know that I have to. But he's like saying something that will make her look more kindly on him. Like he's saying the
Yes.
deserting part because he knows that she
Oh,
empathizes
that's
with
another
Baz.
level because he knows it will play her and
Yeah.
manipulate her.
Yeah, he's being like
Ah,
manipulated in a way. He's not saying what he's really feeling to her. He's just like saying whatever will be she want to hear.
so check this out. There's even yet another level. Do you remember when Errol told Miles, um, like a Vor has to stand in front of their liege lords and not like, or their liegemen and not let them see that you're cracking or whatever, or
Mm,
that you're putting on a fit or whatever. Gregor, during all this, also has to keep her mind at ease that he's in
that's true.
charge, you know. So there's all these things happening at the same time. Very few words. He's like a wizard. He's covering his own ass in a way. Like, yeah, that's great.
Yeah, but that's a good point that it's not maybe just about making himself look better, but it's also like what does she want to hear? What is she gonna feel most comfortable with? And I think that this is part of maybe his childhood, because he grew up with when he was very little, he had his dad that was terrible, and maybe it's like made him a little bit conscious about of course that he's the emperor, but also that maybe he's like more conscious about other people's expectations of him because of this.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny. Like, he's so skilled, we can't tell if he's being virtuous and compassionate or manipulative and shady or both. You know, he's so even keeled.
I just feel like he can't help but be manipulative. I think that for him,
Right.
that's like his, or not necessarily manipulative to be like for his own sense, but just that I think that he has a really good sense of like what other people want him to say and do. And so it's like very hard for him to not do that. And I think that's why he's like acting all like childish and running away.
Yeah. I mean, that is the whole job, right? Is make everyone feel comfortable and safe. You
Hmm.
represent the entire government.
Yeah.
So Miles is like, shit's getting crazy back home, you know. Like, he doesn't know for sure, but of course. So they got to get Gregor back. And then Elena comes out with all these political insights based on her own military analysis. And it's like Miles thinks these stuff and she's just saying it. And he's like, man, he's vibing off it. They're like bouncing off each other. So Elena's lips pursed. I see why it's urgent to you to get him off your hands anyway. If anything happened to him in your company, 15 factions would cry treason plot. That thought has occurred to me, yes, growled Miles. Your father's centrist coalition government would be the first thing to fall, Elena continued. The military right would get behind Count Vorenus, I suppose, and square off with the anti-centralization liberals. The French speakers would want Vor V, the Russians Vor Tugalov, or has he died yet? The far right blow up the wormhole isolationist loony faction would field Count Vortifrani against the anti-Vor pro-galactic faction who want a written constitution, put in Miles glumly. And I do mean field.
Yeah. And the Count Vortafrani sounds very scary. And it's just
Oh
like,
yeah, she's like, dude is not okay. So he sounds like a Hitler type.
yeah.
Oh yeah, he says far right, yeah. So
Mm.
Gregor just goes, stop it. And they're like, what the fuck, dude? This is your job. Like, what, you know? And then she's like, I could give you a job on the ship. And Miles is like, no fucking way. That's not okay. And Gregor's like, what? I'm just joking. And Miles is like, it's not funny. Um, so he asks about Vervain. Elena explains the situation. They're making ships, which is making Aslan nervous. So that's why they're building a station. And some Aslanders just want to do a first strike. They don't want to wait. But Oser has set a high price for any direct action, which has kept them defensive. Meanwhile, Vervain has hired a mercenary fleet called the Randall's Rangers. They even have a Barryaran lieutenant. The leader's name is Cavillo. And Miles is like, what? I'm sure there's a meme that would match this moment. And then he says Cavillo is who tried to buy him for $20,000 or Baton dollars. Miles plans to get to Vervain and go to the consulate ASAP. Get Gregor and him home pronto.
Strange, said Gregor, looking at Elena. At the new Elena, Miles guessed. To think you had more combat experience than either of us. Than both of you, Elena corrected dryly. Yes, well, actually combat is a lot stupider than I imagined. If two groups can cooperate to the incredible extent it takes to meet in battle, why not put a tenth that effort to talk? That's not true of guerrilla wars, though, Elena went on thoughtfully. A guerrilla is an enemy who won't play the game. Makes more sense to me. If you're going to be vile, why not be totally vile? The third contract? If I ever get involved in another guerrilla war, I want to be on the side of the guerrillas.
Oh, man. That is dark. She's been helping governments squash their rebellion. Like, ugh. That sounds terrible. But, sometimes a rebellion is really a fascist coup attempt. So, could go either way. I think she's talking about guerrillas in the sense of like trying to throw off an oppressive system.
I don't know. I think that she is thinking about like that it's more honest somehow to just fight dirty.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of what we did in America when the British came over. We were like, we're not going to stand around in the field every time. Sometimes we're going to run and gun and harry your supply chains and get you in ambushes and stuff like that. But I think a guerrilla war takes that one more step, which is take off the uniform, blend, terrorist acts like assassinations.
I think it can be done many different ways, but I think it's like part of it is it's just to not go with the expectations, I suppose.
Yeah. So Miles likes peace. He says sometimes war is necessary as long as you don't degrade yourself too much. So they're having this little philosophical chat. And Tongue and Mayhew come back. Gregor will pretend to be a soldier, and they'll move Miles in a box. And I hate to laugh at this. It's not okay. Like, put the disabled gentleman in a box. That sucks, but,
it's funny because of when he had to hide in the in that boxy part in the ship, so it's kind of like, oh no, I have to be in the box all the time.
Fuck no, that's terrible. So a Vervani freighter will take them to the planet. And Tongue thinks the freighter captain will be cool. And he makes one last plea. He wishes Miles would stay and help the group. Tongue nodded and sighed. If only you'd stayed on with us. What a soldier I could have made of you these last 3 years. He's so sweet. He's kind of warlike, but nice guy. So he asks for a little indication of who they work for. Nobody answers him. I feel like it's impossible for him not to know at this point. I think he's just like baiting them at this point.
Hard to say. He knows. He probably knows. I think it's like it's so weird that's why he can't really guess. But if someone like he knows all of the facts, he just doesn't probably made the conclusion.
Yeah. So Miles is saying goodbye to Elena.
Right. Give my best to Baz. Tell him it's all right. Your personal safety comes first. Yours and his. The Deri are where he could not quite bring himself to say not important or a naive dream or an illusion, though that last came closest. A good try, he finished lamely. The look she gave me was cool, edged, indecipherable. No, readily decodable, he feared. Idiot, or stronger words to that effect. He sat down, his head to his knees, and let Mayhem affix the lid, feeling like a zoological specimen being crated for shipment to the lab.
So embarrassing and humbling. She just wants him to respect her and to like not be a whiny baby about everything. And he just it's like he falls apart around her because he's still in love with her. The ship leaves Aslan Station bound for Vervain. Miles is excited because he's going to get to wash, eat, and sleep over the next 3 days. He worries about how he's going to write his IMSEC report. He goes over what he thinks is happening all around the hub. He scratches off Pole and the Jackson Hole Consortium. So he's pretty sure Vervain is a part of it, whatever it is. Miles wondered wanly if he could persuade Gregor to give him an imperial pardon from writing a report, and if Ilian would accept it. Probably not.
I think it's maybe there's a saying like, don't think about your report until you're back in safety. You know, he jinxed it by
I mean, his whole deal is like, wait as long as you can so they don't have a chance to give you new orders.
Yeah, I love that in another book where it's like, never send interim reports.
Is that Brothers in Arms?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Gregor mentions how weird Miles was as Naismith.
Miles shrugged himself up onto one elbow. I guess Naismith is me with no breaks, no constraints. He doesn't have to be a good little Vor, or any kind of Vor. He doesn't have a problem with subordination. He isn't subordinate to anyone.
I can tell this is great writing and dialogue and stuff because I have so few like plot points between each one of these quotes. It's like a 4-page section of awesomeness. Let's see. Gregor asks if Miles feels bad, if he wishes he could stay with the Dendarii. Miles says yes, no, I don't know. But then he turns it back around on him. I trust you don't regret escaping contract slavery. No, it wasn't what I'd pictured. It was peculiar, that fight at the airlock, though. Total strangers wanting to kill me without even knowing who I was. Total strangers trying to kill the Emperor of Barriar, I can understand. This... I'm going to have to think about this one.
It's like when Miles, I forget what part that is. Oh yeah, I think that's also later, where he's like, oh, this is the first time someone tried to kill me just for myself and not because of my family. And it's just like, oh shit.
Like being loved by somebody for you.
Yeah, so maybe it's the same for Gregor, like, oh, this is the first time someone tried to kill me without, like, not trying to kill the Emperor.
All right, Gregor brings up Elena. Gregor gave him a sharp glance. It was strange to see Elena again, too. Bothari's dutiful daughter. She's changed. I'd meant her to, Miles avowed. She seems quite attached to her deserter husband. Yes, Miles said shortly. Had you meant that, too? What the fuck, Gregor? Are you just trying to make Miles mad? What the hell?
Yeah,
Ugh.
being so catty.
So Miles says he feels weird about it, but she saved their lives. He goes on to say he's worried that Oser will hurt her and Baz once he leaves. So again, Gregor's surprised he didn't take the offer to stay and fight.
Thanks offer? Miles snorted. Didn't you hear him? I thought you said Da made you read all those treaties. Tang didn't offer command. He offered a fight at 5-1 odds against. He sought an ally, frontman, or cannon fodder, not a boss.
Yeah. I was doing the math. That's 600 officers and non-coms altogether. 500 to 1. Plus the ships. So is that like 4 ships to 20 ships? or is it just the troops? Either way, it's
how
too
do you
many.
count the ships? Like, is it like 100 men to 1 ship? How would you
Oh, right. Yeah, exactly. So Gregor says still, if you weren't with me, you could do it. And Miles says, nope. I have orders to stick with Overholt. Though who knows what Cavillo had planned for Miles back at Jackson's Hole Consortium. And then Miles is like, where is Overholt anyway? They make it to Vervain Station safely, but the freighter captain seems a little squirrely on approach. And then they get to the docking bay, and the captain stands with them. They wait for the next handlers or whatever to meet them. And instead, 6 uniformed troops in an unknown uniform style walk in. And it turns out it's a total stitch-up. The freighter captain is an awful snitch. And Miles is trying not to lose his shit. And Gregor is just like, cool, just comfortable. And Miles immediately is like, Tongue set us up, you know? He's thinking that. And then Cavillo, the captain says he has a family to feed. Like, that's his excuse. And it seems kind of lame, like maybe he doesn't even have a family. At least that was my vibe. The men take all of Miles and Gregor's gear. They report that Miles and Gregor are Oserans, and they do a little comm to Cavillo. She's coming. Miles still thinks Cavillo is a guy. And he thinks they're Randall's Rangers then, hence the unfamiliar uniforms. But why no Vervani in sight? Pardon me, Miles said mildly to the officer, but are you people acting under the misapprehension we are Aslander agents? The officer stared down at him and snorted. I just like Miles just giving shit to the guard. This is what Oser did not want to have happen, and now these people are letting him rattle his lips, rattle his gums. I don't know, one of those. Flap your lips. That's what it is.
Oh yeah,
we have a lot of metaphors. Do you have one for rattle your lips?
It's hard to remember when I'm in the English-speaking mode.
Right, because
like
you have to
something
translate it.
Yeah, it would not come as readily for me. I don't know. We say Bahbla, but that's not any kind of euphemism. It's just a word for like blabbering about.
Yeah. Blah blah blah. Like it. The boss is arriving. Gregor stands up all military-like, and Miles is just tripping because around the corner, it's Livia New.
5 feet tall and a bit added by black boots with higher than regulation heels. Cropped blonde hair like a dandelion areole? I don't know how to pronounce
Oriole.
that. Aureole on that sculptured head. Crisp, tan and black, rank gilded uniform that fit her body language in perfect complement. Livia knew. The officer saluted. Commander Cavillo, ma'am?
Could anything be worse? She's all flirty with Miles. Why, Victor, darling. Her voice went syrupy with exaggerated amusement and delight. Fancy meeting you here. Still selling miracle suits to the unwitting? Miles spread his empty hands. This is the totality of my luggage, ma'am. You should have bought when you could. And now Gregor is like, huh? What? Scooby-Doo moment. So finding out Cavillo is a mercenary makes her actions back on the consortium seem really weird in retrospect.
So why the devil was the commander of Vervaine's mercenary force meeting incognito on Pole Station with a representative of the most powerful house of the Jacksonian consortium? That was no mere arms deal, darling.
So what does that mean? No mere arms deal. Does that mean military assistance? Or like just dirty mafia business, like cleaning up a body, getting rid of Miles?
At least some shady, more shady than a mercenary normally.
Just getting a clone army. They do all kinds of fucked up shit over there. Maybe some genetic chemical weapons. We had those earlier in the story. So she's sending Miles and Gregor to the doctor for fast penta interrogation. And then the freighter captain is like, so my wife and son will be safe? And she's like, yeah, sure, yeah, but we'll use you again. And he's like, but you let him go, right? She's like, nah. Gotta have leverage. And Miles is just thinking, what the fuck is going on? This is very unmercenary captain-like behavior. The captain leaves, and the freighter captain leaves with some guards. And she makes this like evil sounding call to someone, like kind of to keep the freighter captain think they still have his wife and child. And then someone else comes around the corner. You get the last quote.
Stannis, darling, look what we netted this time. It's that little renegade Baton who was trying to deal stolen arms on Pole Station. It appears he is an independent after all. The tan and black Ranger's uniform looked just fine on General Metzov, too, Miles noted crazily. Now would be a wonderful time to roll up his eyes and pass out, if only he had the trick of it. General Metzov stood equally riveted, his iron-gray eyes ablaze with sudden unholy joy. He's no Baton, cabby.
General Metzov. What? He's back? This son of a bitch. Oh, no. This bad guy. So there are a lot of coincidences in this story, but they're so juicy that like you gotta love them, running into Chodak in two different places. Like, I don't know, what else? Cavillo being like across the station at the same place he was. And Gregor being in a prison cell at the same exact time as him.
Yeah, the universe seems really small in this world when they keep running into each other. It's like similar in other books where it's like, oh, you're here. Although I think maybe this is probably the biggest coincidence is probably Miles running into Gregor. That is like very because sometimes when people run into each other, it's like at the Baryaran embassy or something, and then it's like, oh yeah, it makes sense that Baryarans would be there, so it's not as big of a stretch. But here's this like, oh yeah, I'm in this random ship. And of course with Metsov here, it's also unexpected, but maybe in some way maybe not as unexpected, because it's like Miles went to this place because it was seeing a lot of action, and so did Metsov. So it's like the place to be if you're interested in this military situation.
Yeah, the one thing we know about Metsov more than any other is he wants some fucking action. And
Mm,
like here the action is happening and he doesn't
yeah.
have to stay at Kirill Island anymore. He can go out and get in the mix.
Yeah. And maybe it makes sense that Gregor would come here too from this situation because it could be that it's like it's just this place is just swallowing all of this like military technicians, So it makes sense that if you had like some kind of contract labor, that it would be like, okay, where do we need all of this new labor? Okay, at this place. So in some
Yes,
ways,
yes.
I suppose.
And there are really only 3 ways from Kobar. He could go to Escobar, the Hagen hub, or right? Isn't that which way it goes?
Yeah, I don't remember, but you're right that there's at least only a few places,
Or back to
few
Barriar.
hubs
He's
to
not
go
going
to.
back to Barriar. He's not going to get through their airspace. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's Hagen hub or something more boring. Yeah, he wanted action of his own, clearly.
Mm.
He just didn't reckon on slavery. I mean, it's kind of like how in Star Wars there's just droids walking around and like we don't talk about that they are owned but also seem sentient. It's like these militaries are high-end mercenaries. Just this group happens to have slavery. Whatever.
Mm. Yeah, there's no like amnesty in this. Like I'm thinking about the organization, that they would just be like, oh, I don't like this, or they should be maybe I said it before, but they should have like United Nations for the wormholes to be like, this is
Yes.
not very efficient for to fight over the wormholes. We should have like wormhole like I don't know, some kind of wormhole treaty, that it's like you can only take 5% tax and like you have to let all the people through the wormholes except for these people. I don't know.
I feel like the Jackson's Hole Consortium is really pulling down the standards of the Hagen Hub. You know,
Yeah.
it's like as long as they're in the mix, you kind of just gotta look the other way or something. But
Mm.
only in interplanetary. Like they're clearly keeping them on the military station rather than the commercial station. I bet like regular old workers would not put up with slavery workers, right? Although there are some jobs in our country where they use prisoner labor out in the field, and I don't understand why like regular firefighters don't picket the prisoner firefighters, but I guess they need all hands on deck, so they'll take it.
Mm. Yeah. Do you think that it's like a value judgment that there's so many non-democratic systems in this, or like the planets, because it's like we have Jackson's Hole and Barrier, and then like
Cetaganda.
Sidaganda, all of these kind of like non-democratic things, and like it's somehow it makes a judgment about, okay, so we have, how to put it? It's like the idea that they could compete and that it would be like that it would they would be functioning well enough to be like competitive. It's like,
It also reminds me of that period where Britain had outlawed slavery, but they still did tons of business with like slave ship owning companies, or like the South, in the U.S., where the international slave trade was still going. Eventually, it got banned, but there was this weird time there where like there was no moral consistency of any kind. I mean, the British were never really, you know, like hypocrisy is not a big deal for the British colonial empire, or I guess any empire. We don't know how the Vervani structure their society, or Pole, or Asland.
I felt like maybe we learned in Citaganda that Vervain was a democratic government, but maybe I'm
Mm,
mixing it up. I felt like one of the people there was from Vervain, and she was just like mentioned about having this democracy.
nice. Okay, yeah. That one was full of diplomacy, yeah. Who was the lady? Like, it wasn't Miri Mazdur, but it was something like that.
Oh
In that
yeah.
one, she was friendly with
I
the
know what you mean. It
ambassador.
was similar. Maybe it was like mass or something in part
Yeah,
of the name.
yeah, something like that. Well, yeah, listener, I enjoyed this a lot. I was worried when I got here that like it would be dull to go over it, but like these quotes, man, these dialogue moments and these sudden reversals, like so many of them.
Yeah, it's very speedy. Like a lot happens.
And
It just
like hot,
it's so
dangerous lady
dramatic.
paired with like evil nemesis.
Yeah, that's true. It's like the worst combination. But I was also gonna say it's like it's also so riveting just seeing people meet again, because it's so charged with all this history and all this
Yeah.
like different
Elena, Gregor
feelings.
meeting up. They're talking about, and they're upset because Miles was gone for 4 years.
Yeah.
So much going on. Man, just makes you wish that Miles had gotten the letter. Dude's trying to take the fleet away from us. But I guess it happened so fast.
Yeah. I don't know. It's strange that they wouldn't try more to contact him. If that was like, yeah, I don't know. I feel a little bit, when we talk about it with the Elena and Bass and such and their motivation, like if you lost the fleet, then it's like, then I feel like it's all right to leave because you like lost it. You're not
Mm,
commanding it anymore. So I didn't think about that,
mm.
but
That's interesting.
it's not deserting anymore if you're just like if you were taken down in a coup.
Yeah. Huh, interesting. God, that's reminding me of something where like, oh, Jon Snow in A Song of Ice and Fire. Close your ears if you plan on reading that book. But at some point, oh, I guess it's not even in the book. It's in the show Game of Thrones. Like Jon Snow, when he dies, technically he served as a man of the Night's Watch until his death. So his oaths are settled, right? Or at least that's how I would interpret that.
Yeah.
And so that's how he was able to go back and fight for Winterfell. Yeah. But I don't think it was ever certain. And then he goes back and joins the Night's Watch at the very end.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. They should have gotten a write-off. Gone and joined some other company.
Yeah. I feel like it counts. Like if you're cooed out, you don't have to serve anymore.
Yeah. Maybe they felt bad about abandoning Tung and their other officers.
That's true.
Plus, he's still a deserter. Like, there's not really anywhere safe for him in the area. Because Barryaran Imsec is always out there, lurking.
Maybe, but like, why do they care? It's just the deserter. Like, it's not some kind of emperor running away.
I guess we don't know in this book how serious Barryar handles deserters.
I just feel like ImpSec would not. Like, they could have someone, but I don't think that they would be like, oh, we have to put all these resources to it. They would just be like, maybe they would send some message to Jackson's Hole and be like, oh, if you get this guy, we'll pay
Yeah.
10 Barryaran marks for his head.
Yeah, it's some ridiculously low number. And they're like, it's not even worth the filing fee. All right. So next time it's probably chapters 12 and 13. I guess I can look now and see the times. This was like an hour and a half on the audiobook. And I think it's just going to be like that.
Yeah, and it was a long
same.
discussion too. It's a little bit too long for me.
That's 90 minutes. Oh, man. It's almost like we should do a chapter and a half. Like that works in some books, but definitely not in this one.
Mm.
So, do you have any recommendations off the top of your head there?
Only like currently I'm reading City of Girls. I think it's Gilbert something. What is her name? It's the Eat, Pray, Love author. And it's pretty fun, actually. It's about this young woman who goes to live with her aunt in the 1940s, and her aunt is running a theater. So they have this in New York City. So they have this a lot of drama about all the different people in this theater, and it's written very humorously, but it's also some underlying darkness to it, with all these different problems among the different people.
That's awesome. Well, I just want to say What We Do in the Shadows just put out their last season. It's hilarious. Y'all should watch it. It's really good. Vampires and Frankensteins and other silly stuff. Who Back When? I'm listening to their back issues. They cover all of classic Who in order and all of new Who in order. And they're all caught up. So, they have one more episode, Joy to the World, the Christmas episode. I assume they're going to cover it. But it's fantastic. It's funny. It's really filthy. Like if you don't like sex humor, that peeks into the show from time to time. A few swears. So if you're fine with me doing that, you might be fine there. But yeah, if you ever wanted to try to dip into Doctor Who, definitely consider that show. On the main feed that you can get through your podcast apps, I think it goes back to it starts at season or the Tom Baker era and maybe partway through Matt Smith. Before that, I think you have to go to the website, unless I just have the wrong podcast catcher. But anyway, yeah, check them out. And I think that'll do it. No need for socials on you. I'm at El Jefe Tacoma on everything. The Great and Secret Knowledge is on Facebook. So spread the word. Please tell your friends. Let's get more listeners. And we'd love to hear from you and send your reviews or your ideas or your questions to greatandsecretknowledge@gmail.com. And you've heard about my other shows, so I can skip that. And we'll let Sofia get to work. And I'll go to bed, I guess. That's it. Oh, a quote. I should end with a fun little quote here. Let me see. What a soldier I could have made of you these last 3 years. I love tongue. All right. I guess that's it. Thanks, Sofia.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And thank you, listener. We couldn't do it without you. I have my thumbs up pointed in your direction, listener. Bye.
Hey, do.
How do we end this thing? Shout out to Space Knife for letting us use their track, I'm Taking Off, Shield Your Eyes, from their Into the Black Hole EP. Thanks, Space Knife. Keep it rolling.